Welcome to Palm City. Inspired by Miami, it's a haven, a festival centered around the automobile. Earn money and save up for that car you want, but don't get too comfortable because it all turns upside down come nightfall. The festival disappears and the police come out to play, and will stop at nothing to rip your car to shreds and toss you to the side of the road like a crumpled up paper. This is where we will make a name for ourselves. And by us, I mean me, because, well, I'm the one making the video. Heat was, in many ways, a revival of the franchise. For long, Need for Speed was in the limelight of bad design decisions. Payback's lack of free roam police and 2015's online only weren't particularly well received. It was the first game in a long while to not have been lambasted by the player base. The physics are great, and so are the cops with their grand return. Alongside those two ostensible improvements, Heat also made two other strides off of its predecessor, the most easily noticeable one being the upgrade in sense of speed. For far too long, traveling at 200 miles per hour felt as though you were leisurely driving down a suburban road, not pushing your vehicle to its utmost mechanical limits. Cars were faster than ever, but didn't feel that way. Heat made a major stride on this front by making you both feel good going fast and by making you go fast often. The field of view increases, distorting the world around you as you climb the speedometer. Boost throws the camera behind the car, giving off the feeling of a sudden increase in G-force. Palm City's roads were also designed to be raced on, and that is visible throughout the entire map. Close to every major road is wide and open, allowing for a significant amount of room for minor steering adjustments. Your car takes a while to completely stop, so does the road. Curves are rarely sharp enough to force you to lose too much speed. Because you don't have to keep slowing down, you keep going faster, and as they all say, more fast means more fun.
Who says that?
By far my favorite improvement, however, was the boost mechanic. Because the game offers two different types of nitro, a distinct choice has to be made. Do you prefer a single large boost or multiple smaller ones? Using the big boost can be helpful, but it can't give you that slight edge over your opponents when you might need it most, in the same way that small boost can't help you close big gaps. It's a good choice and adds a significant layer of depth to the gameplay. So the improvements off of Payback are great, but what new ideas did Heat bring to the table? Let's start off with its aesthetic. Heat's art style is that of neon lights that penetrate themselves into the emptiness of night. It's about blue, white, and pink radiating into your surroundings, yet it also serves as a means of making your car look far cooler than it actually is. The dealership menu surrounds each car in light, making each and every entry on offer feel pristine and perfect. The lack of distortion in the light being reflected puts the car's impeccable shape on display. The distinct lack of blemishes accentuates the desire one may have for it. Yet that is not where the beauty stops. Quite the opposite, actually. Leaving the garage, the car is bathed in variably colored lights. They display each angle and curve on the body. The lights pulsating in accordance to the background music makes Heat the only game where playing on a hard drive will be considered an upgrade. When entering a race, however, imperfections take the spotlight. Dirt, scuffs, and scratches are highlighted, almost pointed out directly. Battle scars in the form of chipped paint and scratch marks contrast themselves from the otherwise perfect body lines. Wheel motion is also taken into account. If you never did a burnout before starting a race, you probably aren't human. The pause menu freezes the car directly in motion and submerges only a selected portion of it in light, contrasting it from its dark surroundings. It's a small thing, but cars in free roam spit backfire the moment the gas is laid off. The pops and cracks that arise from doing so are loud and crass, and serve as your vehicle's bombastic reaction to each corner. It might not make you feel fast in the way that Unbound's effects do, and you might get some animation fatigue after a while from seeing the same pattern of motion, but Heat's visual style succeeds entirely in what it set out to do, make you admire every car you end up driving. So let's talk about the gameplay. Heat follows an interesting dichotomy, a sanctioned racing festival during the day, one that dissipates and turns into a lawless, crime-ridden street scene by night. Forza Horizon during the day, Need for Speed when the sun starts to set. The police during daytime hours don't attack street racers, they're merely festival participants. During this time, money is earned through legal sanctioned races. There is no interference from the police or traffic. Before daytime races, videographers film the competition's cars while the crowd eagerly watches each racer rev their engine. The starting line itself bears resemblance to that of Forza Horizon, the screen counting down the race start. Music also plays a key role here. It's a party, a festival themed around racing. Levante tu manera, bubble up. That was a terrible Spanish accent. All exude happiness and a carefree party-like atmosphere. It might not be my cup of tea, mostly because I don't drink tea, but the soundtrack mixes well with Palm City's daytime racing vibe. The roar of the crowd complements the party music spectacularly. In a less tangible sense though, daytime races exude a cozy, almost comforting feeling. They serve as a refuge from the unforgiving and merciless night. Simply sitting there, watching the sunset with birds flying off in the background gives off a relaxing, occasionally nostalgic feeling. It's warm warm, it's nice, it's great. Okay, yeah, it's not that great. Heat during the day does not look very good. The location is inspired by Miami, yet purple and muted tones of blue bear the greatest prominence in the game's color palette. It's also raining half the time for some reason. Nothing pops out that much either. For a game released in late 2019, the textures do not reflect much and often feel flat and uninteresting. It's not a road, it's a 3D plane with a texture slapped on it. It doesn't look bad, it just doesn't look good. Daytime races exude gloom, not the happiness that the rest of the game goes to such lengths to give off. The festival atmosphere fails to show itself in the open world too. There's like 2 ads for the Speed Hunters showdown in the entire city. There isn't even a main festival site. It's hard to imagine this festival having any presence if there aren't even any fellow competitors out on the road. Heat's daytime is immersive but not believable. Of course, this mediocrity permeates well into the races themselves. Opponent AI is not great. It often lags far behind the player, resulting in there being absolutely no pressure to drive carefully. I played this game on hard difficulty, yet there were maybe 2 events that challenged me. Lapping opponents is a common occurrence in Heat, and often results in half of the entire gameplay loop feeling like a mindless grind. Daytime races are exclusively circuits, so you will often find yourself racing at low speeds, only half paying attention to the game, while distracted with the thought of how much longer you have to keep driving before you can take your money and leave. Event variation also suffers from poor design. The most profitable races will always be in a small pool, at the cost of taking a minute or 2 longer than the others. Because the only expense here is your time, you're directly incentivized to play those races. You're actively losing money by doing the less lucrative ones. Daytime races are drab and boring. There's never much of an incentive placed on winning or an emphasis on the competition or even the festival. The only reason for you to do these races is because they make you money. The core gameplay loop during the day revolves around only this, which would be fine if there was an overarching goal with that money or an incentive to earn more, but there isn't. So instead, you're left with a pointless and repetitive system. But you know what? The drift events are really good, so I'll give it a pass. But that's about it for the daytime. Let's see what happens when the darkness of night cloaks the city. First off, the graphics. It's this time of day where Heat's true graphical firepower takes the spotlight. Textures pop out realistically, reflections exhibit a certain layer of depth to them. Light radiated from nitrous has also been accounted for and projects itself onto the road on which you drive. Neon checkpoints contrast with the dark night sky and light up the world around you like a paintbrush on an empty canvas, highlighting the fineness and granularity of textures. Water droplets on cars exaggerate the lights around them. The vibe is also well executed. Nighttime is about fighting the system. It's about rebellion. It's about riding that wave of cops without making the wrong move and wiping out. The separate nighttime music playlist reflects this change in tone. Rap music is now the most prominent music genre. El Diablo, Save the Youth. You will feel like you're Goku. This selection of music, apart from being good, is made to elevate your ego when you head over to each race. You're taking a big risk and your enemies are more powerful than you, but this soundtrack elevates your confidence. Night racing is unofficial and the atmosphere is parallel to that theme. Music resonates from portable speakers. Everybody excitedly watches the racers blast by the starting line, but show up in cars to flee from the scene just as quickly. Nobody wants to be around when the cops find out what's going on. Speaking of which,
I can change format if I got to.
let's talk about one of Heat's standout features, Palm City's finest. Heat's police took great inspiration from that of Rivals, in that they exist not to be a fun mechanic to engage with in of themselves, but rather a system meant to exacerbate a risk and reward mechanic. And in that regard, they succeed. Firstly, they're good at stopping you. They exhibit no trouble in keeping up with most cars. They'll slam into you in whichever way they can conjure up, and you will be sorely mistaken if you think that stepping on the gas or weaving through traffic a few times will get them to stop. They'll ram you from behind when you least expect it, or suddenly brake check you when you aren't paying attention. They're not easy to shake off either. A simple handbrake can hurt you instead of crashing them out. You cannot easily wreck them when they're in a group either. They're strong, whereas you're weak. Your health bar shudders when taking damage. Combat is not what your car is designed for. Secondly, they're scary. In Palm City, the cops are the hunters, and you're the hunted. You're the zebra in a field of lions. Their dialogue matches this theme. They're not enforcing the law anymore. To them, busting racers is sport. They excitedly yell when they find you, and annoyedly chatter when you escape them. Aside from the music ramping up its pace at high speeds, sound effects exist to scare you when certain things happen in chases. Dog barking noises play when reinforcements get called in, and the music suddenly ramps up when a rhino comes your way to smash your car to pieces. Do you still feel powerful? These chases are intense, and the game facilitates this well. You can escape the police by merely leaving their peripheral vision, but it is exactly that which is the challenge. Escape times are short for a reason. If they were longer, then the cops would have to be be easier for escaping them to be reliably doable. Risk and reward as a result is a standout feature of Heat. Because player levels are directly tied to unlocking newer things, you're actively encouraged to earn as much as you can through nighttime events. But the more you do them, the higher your Heat level and by extension police response will be. If you get busted, all your rep earned that night is gone. The game becomes a gamble. Do you continue racing now or bank everything at the nearest hideout? That's about the gist of it. In practice, it's that but a lot more fun. The rep multiplier beckons you to do just one more race to push yourself for that reward. The fear of losing all your hard-earned rep constantly looms over your head, tormenting you with the completion of every event. The police are not easy to run away from, and the weight of your every decision fills you with a mix of dread and adrenaline. And then banking it, watching the big funny number go up, rewards you greatly for taking the risk. It might not be as intense as Rivals, but it's a dang good time, and it's what has kept me coming back for over 80 hours. Do I mean to say that the system is flawless? No. The police are aggressive and fast, but the problem is that past car level 350, they can be avoided entirely using speed alone because they simply can't keep up. Escaping them becomes easy. You have to try to stay in the chase for longer than 30 seconds. It doesn't entirely trivialize risk and reward, but it does significantly alleviate the difficulty. Not giving them supercars to combat this problem also comes off as a severe missed opportunity. It's told to you in the story that they steal racers' cars. This would be the perfect use for their stolen property. Regardless, I do stand by my opinion that Heat's risk and reward is some of the best gameplay that the franchise has to offer. Now that we've talked about the gameplay, all we're left with is the story, which definitely exists. The good? Right off the bat, the plot is set up well. From the very first cutscene, it introduces the game's primary antagonists and makes you hate them. Their demeanor and the fact that they steal racers' cars makes you want to take them all down. They might be cartoon villains, but for a racing game, it works. The bad? Well, it's awfully written, voiced even worse, and more contrived than Assassin's Creed Valhalla's story.
Good day, sir. Come in.
The premise is dumb. The plot is that the cops made street racing legal and sanctioned during the day, but people keep racing at night for some reason. It's never told to you why, and instead comes across as the people being rebellious against a system that gave them a pretty good compromise and way to make money. The story is also really hard to explain because it keeps jumping around. It begins as a game about being the best racer in Palm City's festival and street scene, yet then suddenly divulges into a plot about taking down the police. The League is a crew that is deliberately hyped up in the beginning, but is then never brought up later on aside from 2 missions. You don't even end up knowing all of its members. The immersion and sense of competition of racing your way to the top is shattered by the fact that Anna somehow manages to get a secret meeting with them after a mere 5 races. Villains also have very little weight to them. Mercer and Shaw are posed as big, threatening characters that can destroy you at any time, but only appear in a few missions. Don't expect them to try and stop you in their own cars in higher heat level pursuits or hear them berating the police officers actively trying to catch you either. They're the faces of the PCPD, but only in story missions. Do other races in between for long enough and you'll forget that they exist altogether. Neither Shaw nor Mercer are hard to beat. In his own boss fight, Shaw is so caught up in destroying Anna's car that he doesn't even fight back against your attempts to wreck him. Mercer also doesn't fight back in, the final mission. Writing is also absolutely dreadful. Sure, the lines could have been delivered with a little more anything, but even that can't fix a bad script. Anna gets gifted an RWB Porsche after destroying her family heirloom and never taking responsibility for it, while Lucas, who did nothing wrong by the way, gets beat up and handcuffed to a chair by Mercer. Characters are one note and boring. Anna wants to be a street racer, Lucas used to be one but quit because he got in trouble for it, Dex used to be Lucas's friend, the cops are all evil because plot, except Torres, who is good because plot. There is very little to these characters but that. It also, of course, ends very abruptly. After you crash Mercer out, Torres points a pew-pew machine at him, and then the game ends with Lucas gifting Anna the family Camaro. Very little finality is given to this mission. There's no build-up or any stake to this event. It just happens, and as a result, most players won't even realize that they played the final story mission until it's over. But this mediocrity extends far beyond just cutscenes, and bleeds into the missions as well. Aside from the 2 lukewarm boss fights, follow the leader, do this copy-paste race, and stealth missions are what Heat's campaign consists of. For a game called Need for Speed, the last thing I'd want to do is drive the speed limit or follow a cop. If the budget was intended to be stretched this thin, if the story was going to be this silly, if it could be completed in 2 hours, it makes me wonder why it was included in the first place. Why make your good game worse? Why make yourself look bad? Shaw screaming,
Sir. Yes, officer!
At My Character is funny, but Heat's campaign's greatest strength isn't that it's largely ignorable, and that its mediocrity did not spread to much else of the game. In spite of its issues, I believe Heat to be the best Need for Speed of the modern era. It may not have the police that Rivals had or the vibe that 2015 exuded, but this game was solid in most areas. The progression is solid, the driving is fun, and the car list is varied and diverse. No major sacrifice was made in favor of a more cohesive theme, and perhaps that's not always a bad thing. In fact, Heat is so good that you could call it fire. Sorry, I'll see myself out.